Shut up and sit down.
My name is Ellie. Welcome back to Nerd Safari. Today we're going to be talking about one of the most influential movies of my life, 1996 movie The Craft.
The Craft.
Now, along with Tank Girl, this movie is the main reason my wardrobe choices in the 90s led to my parents assuming I was on drugs when I was actually just painfully shy. This movie led to me researching witchcraft, as I'm sure it did many people, and joining a message board where I met a cute young guy who loved The Crow. I ended up marrying him just a few months later, much to my parents' complete horror. However, last year we celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary. We now have 2 teens of our own, which is completely terrifying. We live on another continent, and we host a moderately successful YouTube series about cool movies. So why do we still love this movie? I think at the time we loved the idea of gaining magical powers, and I think we still do if we're honest. During a time in our lives when there was so little we could control.
We can make things happen. I mean, this is it. This is real.
But I think if that's all there was to it, this movie probably wouldn't have stuck with us. Not quite as strongly as it has.
Whatever you do, stay away from them.
Why?
They're witches.
I think what resonated with us was seeing those intense relationships forming between women, and all of them who lived with different kinds of trauma. We also resonated with that all too familiar feeling of sisterly relationships, very intense, turn painfully toxic. I think luckily for most of us, they turn toxic not usually in such a spectacular way.
I go about things the wrong way. I am human and I need.
Now let's talk trivia. The production team followed guidelines and really worked hard to get this movie a PG-13 rating. However, you'll see this movie is R-rated, which the studio did later regret. But the R rating isn't for reasons you might expect. The 90s were a different time. They were hoping to save us, poor, fragile, impressionable teenagers, from dabbling in witchcraft.
You ever heard of invoking the spirit? Black magic.
And dabbling with poor choices ourselves. And I do hope that worked out as well for you as it did for me. I certainly know I made some only excellent choices as a teenager, thanks to this movie being R-rated.
Check it out, her spell is working. Sit.
Now, Robin Tunney, who played Sarah, said of this movie that somehow it still speaks to everybody's inner teenage girl. She went to a bachelorette party where everyone had to bring their guilty pleasure movies. And this is incredibly relatable. Natalie Portman was there too, and we've all been there. Natalie Portman brought The Craft as her guilty pleasure movie. She was too embarrassed to take out once she saw Robin Tunney was there. She said, "Is this flattering or insulting?" Personally, I think it's incredibly flattering, even if a movie I wasn't necessarily proud of. Natalie Portman brings it to a party, I'm all in. Now, the movie we almost got. Angelina Jolie, Scarlett Johansson, and Alicia Silverstone all had screen tests for the role of Sarah Bailey. And I think with any of them, we could have had a very different feel of the movie. You might notice that in a few of the scenes, the 4 leads have quite a different style compared to the rest of the movie. If you look at their outfits, their different style choices for the wardrobe. Now, this is because initially the 4 characters were intended to have more of a nerdy style. And after filming for a week, the studio just weren't feeling that. They didn't like the look. It just didn't flow with the general tone of the movie they were hoping. So one of the writers, Andrew Fleming, went in one of the meetings and he said, what if those 4 weird girls in high school were witches, but what if instead of nerds, they dressed like The Cure? Now, this was an incredible suggestion, amazing choice, which kicked off an entire revolution in teen fashion. And current fashion for some 40-something-year-old mums. Now, a year ago, a full year, we saw the announcement of a reboot of this movie, which did terrify some fans, especially me. It's written and directed by Zoe Lister-Jones and stars David Duchovny. However, looking into it, it does seem to be a sequel set 20 years later rather than a straight remake. Now, I did look into this, the status at the moment. As of March, just a few weeks ago, the producer said the principal photography is complete, so the movie is pretty much done, maybe some final shoots. The movie is currently being edited, so I guess watch this space. I think they're still hoping to have it out later this year, but we'll have to wait and see. So there you have it. This movie was so iconic for us in our teens, and on revisiting it, I am very glad to report that the rebellious spirit of this movie feels as relevant for me now as it did 24 years ago.
Girls, watch out for those weirdos.
We are the weirdos, mister.
If you're wondering, it is definitely worth rewatching, so add it to your queues. It is available on most streaming services when I checked earlier this week, and also keep an eye on your library digital loans right now. They do have a lot of free movies available, worth checking out. Support your libraries. Thank you for coming and watching another one of our fun Nerd Safari videos. As always, please tip your delivery folk. You never know what could happen if you treat people unfairly. And remember that what you put out into the universe will return to you times 3. Thank you from Nerd Safari. See you again very soon.
Shut up and sit down.